I'd like to introduce Dr. Tay Hui Yong. She's an avid user of technology to support her pedagogy, to enhance the teaching and learning experience for her students. So let's warmly welcome Dr. Tay.
Those of you who see that I kind of like winced a little bit because I have to start with a disclaimer. I am not a techie person. In fact, if anything, later on what I'll be following out is what I'll be sharing with you is a very small start to me using Blackboard and particularly LAMS in Blackboard. If anything, my exposure to the use of technology is very much more of what I see in the schools. And really, if you have seen the kind of things I've seen every time when I go out to visit or hear from, it's quite amazing what a lot of very innovative teachers are doing out there. Very clever use of technology. Not use of clever technology, but really reconceptualizing what some of the things, and maybe we can discuss that a little bit more during the break as to how the schools are using it. But maybe for this point in time, let me just share very quickly how I make use of Blackboard and parked within Blackboard LAMS. Okay, so like I say, very much to share with you what was the blended approach that I was taking. This particular lesson that I did was with the MLS students. It was just really out of exigency, contingency. It was the eve of Chinese New Year. I didn't want, those poor people to endure such long bus rides and to come here just for the 3 hours. So thought about how I could engage them in learning. I do plan to make use of it later on in the undergrad, the pre-service assessment course, as well as in-service. In fact, if you have seen notice going out about assessment colloquium that's organized by CTL, there's a blended course in there, and it's our way of trying to experiment on a larger and larger scale the use of blended learning. I think this next two parts, the collaborative activity in class and all that, I would leave a little bit for our CEL friends to take you through. So I'll just take you through the use of LAMS. Okay, so why LAMS for me? Like I say, I'm not a techie person. For me to make use of any technology, it must pass 3 tests that I have. The first one is the 3 clicks test. The next is the OCT test, and the last one is the F test. And now let me explain what all of them mean. The first one, the 3 ticks test, is pure and simply, I must be able to learn it in 3 clicks. That's all. I have no patience to be, reading through a manual. I always say, I complain to my husband that a manual is probably written by men. I really don't get it, okay? It has to be that it's intuitive. And for me, the LAMS is such an easy interface to use because it's better than clicks. It's a drag and drop. And Julie from CTL will know that I love drag and drop because I don't have to remember this and that and the other. And it's not just for me to learn how to put it together. And seriously, later on when Casey and gang will take you through the LAMS, I wanted to show you the handout that he gave me for learning of LAMS. It was just like that 2-page thing. And the rest of it is very intuitively just drag and drop it and all that kind of thing. And you don't even have to drag it and drop it at the right place. You just drag it and drop it in a space. How cool is that? But more important thing is that it must be also easy to use for the students. Not just on my end, but how do they experience the learning through LAMS. So for them, because when you create the sequence in LAMS, they will be taken automatically from one stage to the other. So they don't have to get into the particular activity, get out of the activity to follow the sequence and then get into it. It's a lot of time, and we really don't want to frustrate the learners. So for me, that was it, one of the first reasons. The next reason, what OCT is, the obsessive compulsive teacher. Those of you who know what I mean, right? You plan a lesson and you replan, and I think I would rather do this first. And then I would not want to try and waste time trying to undo the planning of a lesson. I rather want to spend time in creating the resources and thinking about it. So let me share with you what I did with this particular lesson as a way of showing how I experienced it. What happened was that I started off with, for this particular course, a diagnostic test. It was for assessment. So I wanted to know what the HODs thought about various assessment terms. So I had a diagnostic test. So what do we do after the diagnostic test is I could stand in class and boring, you know, like comprehension back in secondary school. Question number 1, what is the correct answer? Question number 2, what is the correct answer? Rather than do that, what I did was to create my own video with their answers. I knew where their answers were. I knew what the answers most people chose. It was a multiple choice thing. And then what I did was to actually talk through why A was wrong and why B would have been better and why C is actually the most appropriate answer and all that. So I started off the lesson with a feedback on a diagnostic test before I went on to a new topic using a video. I'm a big fan of videos. I think actually we will remember Mark Prensky saying, you know, video is the new text. You know, and so I do quite a bit of things in video. So then well, for some of us who like, I'll show you later on what I make use of. This great thing called Educreations. It's an app that I use on iPad. It is, again, it passes the 3 clicks test. Absolutely easy to use. And sometimes you could just, you know, get one from YouTube. There's so much YouTube videos. I'm sure you know it, and everybody is learning how to do things on the YouTube. And then after going through the topic, what I did was each time I would stop to ask them how they felt about it, and the collaborative part of it kicked in when I formed a forum for them in there to be discussing certain things, and then to be, even if they didn't interact actively, the fact that they were looking at it and seeing what their peers were writing. And finally, to end off in a feedback, it was very easy. What I asked for them to tell me was 2 things that they've learned and maybe 1 other comment based on what they have learned here. I have mentioned that really nowadays what worked for me, particularly with now that I'm using a lot more of the iPad, is that there are so many apps out there that makes video recording really very fast and very, very easy. So I made use of Educreations to create the videos that I have. Show the next one. So like I was mentioning earlier on, I had the answers of the diagnostic test. So what I did was to record my feedback to the answers in there, and then to just put it up there for them to see. Yeah. My last test is actually the F test, which is the feedback. I mean, we all know how important formative feedback is. I mean, that's all of the research and all this about formative assessments and stuff like that. So whatever I plan in my lesson, it must be rich in feedback. It must give me feedback as to how the students feel about the lesson, how they're learning the lesson, as well as opportunities for them to give me feedback as to how I was doing. So one thing about LAMS is that, of course, as I've said here, you can put up very quickly a quiz or whatever it is to ask them of the feedback of the session, which is what is this in this case here. But objectively, also in LAMS, this cool thing that you can have, which is to track every student and where they are in that sequence. So if, let's say, you have a class of 20 and all of them are still kind of like, with the red square is where they're at, all of them have finished, that's great. But if there are some who are still here, you can actually go in and prompt them and say, hey, what's happening? Is there an issue? Do you understand? Or whatever is the case is. I love this particular one about it. The next one is even better as well. It actually tracks how much time they spend on each of the activity in the sequence. So if they are like for the tests that you have set up the quiz and they took like 2 seconds to do it, then that tells you probably not much thought into thinking about the various alternatives in there. So this gives me great objective feedback apart from the survey, the self-perception feedback at the end of it. Yeah. Of course, at the end, proof of the pudding is in the eating. I did ask the students how they felt about it. Of course, number one, they appreciated not coming to campus on Chinese New Year's Eve. Yay! It was refreshing. It was a refreshing change from the usual, but as a way of interacting online, as a way of imbibing the content as well. So this isn't quite complete, but yes, I had very good review based on this particular lesson. And it's upon this that then one particular colleague and I, as I've said, we are thinking of expanding on this particular approach, a blended approach to teaching and learning subsequently later on in the undergraduates as well, not the undergraduates, what do you call it, pre-service as well as the in-service. And that's all that I have to say. But I think this is the part I value most. Perhaps any particular thing that you came in that I want to know about, but I have not addressed and you want to bring it up? Yes?
You mentioned you created a forum for them to discuss.
Yeah.
What sort of program do you use for the forum?
Program as in yeah, it's all within in LAMS. That's the beautiful thing about it. They are just there, they are guided there. So they don't have to get out to a Google Docs or whatever it is. It's all within in there. I'm sure I have actually not, I've probably only used like maybe 20% of what is possible in LAMS because it was launched very quickly. I think within maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks into learning it, it was already Chinese. This year Chinese New Year was early, right? Yeah, so I probably did not capitalize as much of the facilities in there. Yeah. Yes?
Does LAMS allow you to have sequences that branch out, like to have like 3 sequences that students can choose from?
Can you differentiate the sequences?
And it does? Yes.
The experts say yes. Yes, I do remember that Casey was saying that it can be a differentiated. You actually, for different groups of students as well, right?
Studying more advanced.
Yeah.
We have these workshops, the basic and the advanced one. So the advanced one will actually cover the branching section.
Yeah, okay.
So you need not wait until we have workshops. Anytime you feel that you want to learn, just contact us. We're sure you can help.
Okay, that one I can testify to. Okay, the folks in CEL is so great. Every time, I've been bugging them in the short time that I've been here, and yes, I attest to the fact that anytime I have a problem, they will help me with it. I think I just want to touch upon this point about differentiated. Yes, it can branch out and all, but for me, what was the most powerful of what I saw when I was in school and the use of resources parked up there online for the kids to go through was that that kids, if they need more time, I keep saying kids, I forget that 17 years in one particular school did, but anybody who's into it, if they need to take more time, they can take more time without feeling stupid. That was really the thing that was powerful for me, that if you need more time, fine, you take more time, rather than staying, sit there and like, oh, I don't understand, but why does everybody nod as if they understood what's wrong with me? Or if somebody is particularly faster, they can go at it and take it from there, and some other resources parked in there can be help those to dig deeper. I think in the Blackboard that Rachel set up for this particular course, I started the thread about blended learning, and I think there was a request to have an article on blended learning. Well, I didn't, in there what I put was not an article about blended learning per se, but it was my 3-year study in that school because it launched the iPad, and what I did was to track what was happening across the 3 years. So I invite you to just go in there, the forum, and then maybe to ask questions after you have read the paper itself to see, you know, how, just basically give feedback to me. I would really appreciate that as well. Thanks. Any other questions? I was told I only have to work for 15 minutes, then I get tea. Was the easiest way.
Well, okay, if you have any more questions during tea break, we have about 10 to 15 minutes of tea break, interact with each other, ask more questions, you know, and spur each other on. So we just really want to, could we just give Dr. Tay a warm applause for her presentation? Fast and good. Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Tay.
Wow.